So good evening, everyone. Before start, just I want to know that my voice is audible and screen are visible to you. I just want to check that my voice is audible and screen are visible to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So today we are going to discuss Hibernate. We are going to start to discuss Hibernate. Okay. So the first thing is first. Before discuss and deep dive into Hibernate. Before discuss and deep dive into Hibernate. So we need to understand how to create Hibernate project. Okay. So for that reason, I'm going to create one Hibernate project. Look here how I can create Hibernate project. So from now, every Java project is a Maven project. So I'm going to create new Maven project. Maven project. It's a select a create simple project. That's a skip archetype selection. Click a next. Type your group ID. It's a reverse of your domain. That's the com.example. The artifact ID, that's your project name. So my project name, I'm going to write a Hibernate application for employee. And we required jar file. And let's finish. Okay. So that's our project, right? Within our project, we have form file. And what is the purpose of form file? It is a configuration file for Maven project. It is a configuration file for Maven project, right? So within that configuration, there are number of configuration, but we are use only dependencies. So we learn that things how we can use a dependencies within a POM file. POM stand for project object model, right? So in our last project, we are use a single dependency. That dependency is uh, regarding PostgreSQL driver. But now we are going to use one framework. That framework name is Hibernate. After that, with that framework, we are going to use one another things. That's also one kind of framework. It's a Jakarta. So every framework have a number of library. That's every framework divided in number of models. That model are work individually. And here we are going to see the Hibernate framework. So when you are going to use Hibernate framework or any other framework within your Java, then it is recommended you always use it is recommended that you always use bill of material. So before learn Hibernate, we are going to see what is the bill of material. Okay. So the bill of material, that stand bill of materials, it's in a short we call it a BOM, BOM. The bill of materials is special kind of POM, that means project object model. That file that defines a set of dependencies and their versions, which can be used across multiple projects. It essentially a centralized repository of dependency version that can be easily managed and shared. So BOM typically contains dependency versions and dependency management. That means it's a way to manage dependency and their version across multiple projects. That means BOM. And we are used that BOM. It's stand for bill of material. आता सिंपल भाषेत परत एकदा सेम थिंग मी रिपीट करतोय मराठीमध्ये. बॉम्ब स्टँड व्हॉट्स अ बॉम्ब? बॉम्ब स्टँड फॉर बिल ऑफ मटेरियल. आता याचा वापर कुठे होतो बघा. का वापर होतो मी हे सांगतो. जेव्हा आपण कुठलाही एंटरप्राइज प्रोजेक्ट बनवत असतो, तेव्हा त्या एंटरप्राइज प्रोजेक्टमध्ये खूप साऱ्या लायब्ररीज, फ्रेमवर्क्स आपण वापरत असतो. मग आणि या लायब्ररीज, फ्रेमवर्क काही काळानंतर अपडेट होत असतात. मग अशा वेळेस जर कुठली लायब्ररी अपडेट झाली किंवा कुठला फ्रेमवर्क अपडेट झाला आणि आपण जो कोड केलाय तो डिप्रिकेटेड कोड मध्ये जर आपला आपला कोड जर डिप्रिकेटेड कोड मध्ये गेला तर अशा वेळेस आपल्याला प्रत्येक वेळेस आपल्याला कोड हा रिराईट करावा लागतो, म्हणजे हार्ड कोडिंग करावं लागतं. मग दुसरी एक पॉसिबिलिटी काय असते, की आपल्या सर्व्हरवर आपण आपलं ॲप्लिकेशन होस्ट केलंय. आता मला दुसऱ्या सर्व्हरवर माझं सेम ॲप्लिकेशन होस्ट करायचं. मग प्रत्येक वेळेस मला काय करावं लागेल, की माझ्या ज्या डिपेंडन्सी आहेत, त्या डिपेंडन्सी ॲड करत जावं लागेल. ऑफकोर्स Mavenमुळे ते सोपं होतं ॲड करणं. पण आपल्याला जर स्पेसिफिक व्हर्जनचीच लायब्ररी आपल्या प्रोजेक्टमध्ये पाहिजे असेल, तर अशा वेळेस आपल्याला जर व्हर्जन आठवत नसेल किंवा अपडेट झालेला असेल, तर त्यावेळेस हा प्रॉब्लेम येऊ शकतो, की व्हर्जन इनकम्पॅटिबिलिटीमुळे आपला कोड क्रॅश होऊ शकतो. आपलं ॲप्लिकेशन क्रॅश होऊ शकतं. मग हा प्रॉब्लेम दूर करण्यासाठी बिल ऑफ मटेरियल अस्तित्वात आलं. मग या बिल ऑफ मटेरियलमध्ये आपण काय करतो, की डिपेंडन्सी मॅनेजमेंट करतो. मग या डिपेंडन्सी मॅनेजमेंट टॅगमध्ये आपण आपल्याला कुठलं बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरायचं आहे, म्हणजे कुठली लायब्ररी वापरायची ती डिफाईन करतो. आणि त्याच्यानंतर नॉर्मल डिपेंडन्सीजमध्ये टॅगमध्ये आपण त्या लायब्ररीमधून कुठलं मॉडेल आपल्याला वापरायचं हे डिफाईन करतो. तर अशा पद्धतीने बिल ऑफ मटेरियल हे वापरलं जातं. मग हे बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरताना जे आर्टिफॅक्ट आपण निवडतो, त्या आर्टिफॅक्टचे काही टाइप्स आहेत. आणि हे आर्टिफॅक्ट टाइप टॅगने डिक्लेअर केले जातात. सो व्हॉट्स दॅट आर्टिफॅक्ट? जार. इट्स अ डिफॉल्ट जावा लायब्ररी. It stand for Java archive. After that POM, it's a POM file. Maximally when we are use any bill of material, we are use that POM file. After that, there are scope. That scope declare when and where the dependency are used. When we are declare scope have some category like a compile, provided, and runtime. What means a compile? Default scope is a compile. If we are not write any scope, then it's a compile scope. The provided means what? The server, it should be provide that library, executable library. Runtime means what? It's no need to compile. It's provided only at runtime by some specific server or specific framework. So that things we are going to use within a bill of material. So here I create one simple project. Within that project, I want to use bill of material. To use bill of material, I need to use one tag, that's a dependency management. Dependency management, right? Within that tag, I need to add the parent dependency. That parent dependency wrap all modules from that dependencies. So from where we can select that parent dependency? Look here. So I open Maven repository. Here I search Jakarta. Before search Jakarta EEBOM, we can search Hibernate. We are going to use 7.0.5 version. That's the final version. That version I'm going to use within our BOM. But how I can select that thing? That means how I know that thing. That all things are written within just a minute. Okay. Okay. So that all things are written within a documentation. So let's see. That's the Hibernate ORM user guide. If you check that ORM user guide, there are a prerequisites that to use Hibernate, we required Java runtime either 17 or either 21. A current Hibernate version we are using 7.0. That 7.0 version are to use that version we required say Java version, JDK version 17 or 21. It's not possible to work Hibernate version 7.0.5 on Java version 8. After that, next requirement. To use Hibernate, we required Jakarta persistent. So what is the Jakarta persistent? We are going to learn. So Jakarta persistent is required to use Hibernate and that version is a 3.2. After that, the JDBC bundle, which is provided by our Java SDK, that's a version is required minimum 4.2. And currently we are using 4.3. So that's a prerequisite to use Hibernate. After that prerequisite, we are going to use Maven, right? If you use a Gradle, then that's configuration you require. But we are going to use a Maven. So for Maven, look here, that dependencies we are going to use, that is a bill of material. So let's use it. So within dependency management, I write a dependencies. Within a dependencies, I write that parent dependency. That's a hibernate.orm. That's version is 7.0.5 final. Here I'm use a type POM and the scope is import. Scope is import. That means this POM file are holding that all dependencies with the version which belong from version Hibernate version 7.0.5. Once we are declare that dependency within a dependency management, then we need to use a dependency that's particular model. So that model we need to add here without what? Without version. So that model we are going to add here without version. So that's the way to use bill of material. So that's the way to use bill of material. So before uh, proceed the next things, if you have any doubt regarding bill of material, please ask me. I'm going to post that code with you in chat box. So what we are learn? BOM. It stand for bill of material. Okay. A bill of material is a special kind of project object model file that defines set of dependency and their versions, which can be used across multiple projects. So here we are used bill of material for our Hibernate project. And for that reason, look here, I simply use one tag. That tag name is a dependency management. That tag is a dependency management. Okay. So within that tag, I added Prewler dependencies. And within that dependency, we are added the parent dependency, which is holding number of models from that particular framework. After that, currently we are use only Hibernate. We are not use Jakarta. Or if we are use Jakarta, then we need to add second dependency, that is Jakarta. So let's add that things also. So here I'm going to add second dependency within our dependency management, that is Jakarta. So Maven project, we required Jakarta bill of material. Version is 11.0. So that bill of material we required. Let's copy and paste it. Now, that two dependencies holding number of libraries. That means small bunch of models. That's a whole graph within that dependency. So that two dependency we are use here. After that, I'm added these dependencies within my project. So it's a dependency. It's a group ID. Group ID is Jakarta activation. Jakarta activation I required. So artifact ID. It's a Jakarta activation API. After that, we required one more thing, that's a transaction. Version is not required because version are belong from that particular Jakarta bill of material. After that, next dependency are required to open close. Why it's showing a error? Okay, I will collect it from Maven. Okay. So after Hibernate, I need one another dependency, that's the activation and transaction, and I will collect it from the documentation of Hibernate. So that's the way to add a dependency with the use of bill of material. So we are avoid the things which happen due to cross bill versions. So that's a full form file. Let's check it. I just added the scope for Jakarta platform. So students, are you understand that things how to use that means how to configure a POM file for Hibernate project. Did you understand how to configure POM file for Hibernate project? Please review that POM file which I am post on chat box, and still if you have a question, please ask me. Okay. So, bill of material. What is the bill of material? It is a special kind of form file that defines a set of dependencies and their version, which can be used across multiple projects. It essentially a certain repository of dependency version that can be easily managed and share. त्यासाठी आपण बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरतो. बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरायचं कशासाठी? व्हर्जन मिसमॅच होऊ नयेत यासाठी बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरायचं. का व्हर्जन मिसमॅच होऊ नयेत? हे बघा. आता आपण जकार्ता वापरला, बरोबर? जकार्ता वापरला. तर हे जकार्ता बिल ऑफ मटेरियल आहे आणि व्हर्जन कोणतं 11. पण याच्यामध्ये असंख्य हे फ्रेमवर्क आहे. जकार्ता इज वन काइंड ऑफ फ्रेमवर्क. फ्रेमवर्क म्हणजे काय? की खूप साऱ्या लायब्ररीचा बंच म्हणजे एक फ्रेमवर्क असतं. मग याच्यामध्ये खूप साऱ्या लायब्ररीज असतात. मग त्या लायब्ररीला आपण मॉड्यूल्स म्हणू आणि इथे खाली ते डिफाईन केलेले. तर ह्याच्यामध्ये जकार्ता ॲक्टिव्हेशन एपीआय म्हणून लायब्ररी आहे. त्याचं व्हर्जन आहे 2.1.3. अॅनोटेशन एपीआय म्हणून लायब्ररी व्हर्जन आहे 3.0.0. आपल्याला लागणार कुठली लायब्ररी? तर जकार्ता ट्रान्झॅक्शन. जकार्ता ट्रान्झॅक्शन बघा कुठे आहे? खाली कुठेतरी आहे. जकार्ता पर्सिस्टंट एपीआय आहे. 3.2 व्हर्जन आहे. 3.2.0. सर्व्हलेट पण यामध्येच येतं. आणि जकार्ता ट्रान्झॅक्शन एपीआय ज्याचं व्हर्जन आहे 2.0.1. मग आपलं प्रीरिक्विजिट काय आहे हायबरनेटसाठी? की जकार्ता पर्सिस्टंट एपीआय 3.2.0 पाहिजे. म्हणजे आपल्याला जकार्ता प्लॅटफॉर्म कुठला वापरायचा? 11 जो लेटेस्ट आहे. मग हे व्हर्जन मिसमॅच होऊ नयेत यासाठी बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरणं गरजेचं आहे. बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरणं गरजेचं आहे. जेणेकरून पर्टिक्युलर प्लॅटफॉर्म मधूनच आपल्याला पर्टिक्युलर व्हर्जन्स मिळतील आपल्या लायब्ररीज. मग अशाच पद्धतीने आपण हायबरनेट ORM, हायबरनेट फ्रेमवर्कचा बिल ऑफ मटेरियल वापरलं. जे बिल ऑफ मटेरियल होतं व्हर्जन 7.0.5 फायनल. That bill of material we are used. So that's the use of bill of material. ओके. तर दुसरा प्रश्न असा होता की Maven रिपॉझिटरी मधून specific repository, how we can get a specific repository. Look here. Before a search anything, you must aware about that things, what the things you require. So I required only ORM. That ORM holding the core library. So that's why I search only Hibernate. From that Hibernate, there are number of bunch of libraries are there, like Hibernate Core is there, Hibernate ORM Hibernate Core is there, Hibernate Validator is there, Hibernate Entity Manager Relocation is there. But from that all versions, I required only that version which have a full functionality. So it's a Hibernate ORM Hibernate Core. If it is a relocated, then don't use that version which is relocated. So it's a relocated. We are not going to use that things. Look here. The validator engine. We doesn't require that validator engine to learn Hibernate. So just we required the core functionality from Hibernate. So that's why we are select Hibernate ORM Hibernate core. So before search the things, you must require to understand what's your requirement. So once you are listed your requirement, then you can search that things on Maven. It's not possible that you can search on randomly. Okay. So I hope everyone understand how to create a project with a Maven for a Hibernate purpose, Hibernate framework purpose, right? So now let's start to discussion regarding Hibernate. So before discuss Hibernate, we need to discuss the ORM. So what is the ORM? ORM stand for Object Relational Mapping. ORM is a technique that allow developers to convert data between incompatible type system. In object-oriented programming language, ORM tools like Hibernate map Java objects to a database tables and manage the relationship between these objects and databases. काय याचा अर्थ? ओके. तर समजा हा आपला डेटाबेस आणि हा आपला प्रोग्राम. आपण डेटा ट्रान्सफर करतोय प्रोग्राम कडून डेटाबेस कडे, तसंच डेटाबेस कडून प्रोग्राम कडे. बरोबर. आता मला सांगा आपला हा प्रोग्राम आणि हा डेटाबेस. हा डेटाबेस हे आपल्या प्रोग्रामचा भाग नसतो, कधीच नसतो. इट इज अ थर्ड पार्टी ऍप्लिकेशन. इट इज अ थर्ड पार्टी ऍप्लिकेशनच आहे. मग या ऍप्लिकेशनशी आपण काय करतोय? इंटरॅक्ट करतो. मग आता इंटरॅक्ट करताना डेटा एक्सचेंज करणार आहे आपण. मग आपण शिकलेलो आहोत की थर्ड पार्टी ऍप्लिकेशन सोबत इंटरॅक्ट करताना आपण डेटा जो आहे तो कन्वर्ट करून पाठवतो बाईट स्ट्रीम मध्ये. बरोबर आहे. बाईट स्ट्रीम मध्ये कन्वर्ट करून पाठवतो. पण डेटाबेस ऍप्लिकेशन कडे त्या कन्व्हर्जनचं परत ऑब्जेक्ट मध्ये रूपांतर करण्यासाठी कुठलाही युटिलिटी किंवा कुठलाही कोड नसेल, तर तो बाईट स्ट्रीमचं एन्क्रिप्शन करू शकणार नाहीये. राइट? मग ह्याच्यासाठी आपल्याला अशा एक मिडलमॅनची आवश्यकता वाटली, जो अंडरस्टँड करेन डेटाबेसला काय पाहिजे आणि जो अंडरस्टँड करेन प्रोग्रामला काय पाहिजे. आपल्या प्रोग्रामला काय पाहिजे? ऑब्जेक्ट पाहिजे फक्त. कारण आपण ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग करतो. मग इकडे फक्त ऑब्जेक्ट पाहिजे आणि या साईडला काय पाहिजे? तर एसक्यूएल पाहिजे. कारण डेटाबेस काही ऑब्जेक्टला ग्राह्य धरत नाही. डेटाबेसला कळतच नाही की काय आहे ऑब्जेक्ट. इथे फक्त एसक्यूएल माहित असतं याला आणि इकडे काय माहिती असतं प्रोग्रामला? तर ऑब्जेक्ट माहित असतं. ऑब्जेक्ट माहित असतं प्रोग्रामला. मग इथे आपल्याला एक मिडलमॅनची गरज आहे, जो SQLचं कन्व्हर्जन करेल ऑब्जेक्टमध्ये आणि ऑब्जेक्टचं कन्व्हर्जन करेल SQL मध्ये. काय इथे एक मिडलमॅनची गरज आहे, जो ॲक्चुअली ऑब्जेक्टला मॅप करेल SQLशी आणि SQLला मॅप करेल ऑब्जेक्टशी. And that's called object relational mapping. That means ORM. Is it done? Is it clear? What is the ORM? Are you understand what is the ORM? Is there any question regarding ORM? Okay, did you understand what is the ORM? Okay, तर ना आता तुम्हाला माहिती की ORM काय, right? So there are number of ORM tools. I just close that thing. There are number of ORM tools. For example, Hibernate. So what means ORM tool? ORM tool म्हणजे काय? की it's a library. That library map object to SQL and SQL to object. So it's a library. That's one kind of framework. So object relational mapping tools in Java are used to map Java objects to a database tables and vice versa. So there are number of ORM tools available. These tools are designed to simplify database interaction in Java application by reducing the need to write extensive boilerplate code and by providing features that make working with the database more efficient and maintainable. That's why we are use ORM tools. So there are number of ORM tools and we are going to study only Hibernate. So first one is Hibernate. Second one is Eclipse Link is there. Third one is MyBatis is there. Fourth one is Apache Sign-in is there. Next is OpenJP is there. So there are number of ORM tools are there. We can use that ORM tools according to our requirement because every ORM tool have a unique feature. Every ORM tool have a unique feature. So Hibernate also have a unique feature, right? But initially within my project, I use the Hibernate, and after write some code, I need to switch Hibernate from other ORM tools due to some client specific requirements, and that requirements I will I was found on Eclipse link. Then to switch one ORM tool to another ORM tool, it's very hectic task. And to avoid that hard coding, we are use one a structure, that structure provided by Jakarta project, and it's called Jakarta Persistent API. What it's called? Jakarta Persistent API. So we are discuss ORM. We are discuss its tools, and we are discuss JPA. So what is the JPA? It stands for Jakarta Persistent API. It is a specification within a Jakarta platform that provides a framework for managing relation data in Java applications. It defines a set of interfaces and standard for object relational mapping, which allow developers to interact with the database using Java objects rather than writing raw SQL queries. So that's a JPA. So I hope you are understand ORM tools and JPA. Is any question regarding that three concept? Okay. So if you're not have any question, then I'm going to deep dive. Why we are use a JPA? JPA provide a standard structure for any ORM tool, for types of ORM tool. If you are use that standard structure, then it is easy to migrate from one ORM tool to another ORM tool. And that's the purpose to use a JPA. Okay. And to write any Hibernate application, we are going to use a JPA. Okay. So what is the Hibernate? Let's switch to Hibernate. The Hibernate is an object relational mapping, that means ORM framework for Java, that provides a framework for mapping an object domain model to a relational databases. It simplifies the development of Java's application to interact with the database by allowing developers to work with the objects rather than SQL queries. So Hibernate is an open source object relational mapping framework for Java applications. It's a provide framework for mapping an object-oriented domain model to a relational databases, right? So if you want to see history of Hibernate, then you need to visit documentation. So I just minimize it, open a documentation. So that's the documentation. So how you can check that documentation? Look here. Just search Hibernate on your browser. It's showing one link. That link is hibernate.org. Visit that site, hibernate.org. Look here. From Hibernate, there are number of libraries are there. That means Hibernate ORM is there, Hibernate Search is there, Hibernate Validator is there, Data Repository, Reactive, others is there. From that all library, to learn Hibernate, just we require Hibernate ORM. It's a core library. If you are select that library, if you are select that framework, then from that framework, we need to select the version, that's a latest stable version, that's a 7.0, latest stable version 7.0. Once we are select version, look here, there are a number of specification and guides. From that number of specification and guides, we required only a short guide to Hibernate ORM. Short guide to Hibernate ORM. So whatever things you are going to learn, that all things are available here. Hmm? That all things are available here. Where? A short guide to Hibernate 7. Okay. So let's start. Okay. So when you want to use Hibernate have one architecture. That architecture is what? Uh, Suppose it's your code. It's your code that we called data access layer. That means it's your code, your database code. Suppose it's your database code. That name is a data access layer. You want to use Hibernate, right? And there are two ways are available to use Hibernate. That's one way. Either you can use JPA. Either you can go with the JPA. JPA stand for Jakarta Persistent API. Or either you can go with Hibernate native API. So there are two ways to use Hibernate. Either you can go with the JPA or either you can go with a native API, Hibernate native API. So there are two ways are available to use Hibernate. Okay. So anyway, your use, it's used for what? What's the purpose? To use Hibernate. The purpose is use Hibernate. So that's why we are use Hibernate. So that's a Hibernate architecture. Is any question regarding Hibernate architecture? Is any question regarding Hibernate architecture? There are two ways to use Hibernate. Either we can use a JPA or either we can use Hibernate native API. So using that two ways, we can use Hibernate, and Hibernate internally I use JDBC to handle a raw queries. So that's a Hibernate architecture. Okay. So I just draw one Hibernate architecture. How that Hibernate will be work. Look here, that data access layer. That means that's your code, your program. That program interact with Hibernate via JPA, either JPA or either Hibernate native API. That means to interact Hibernate, there are two ways are available. Either we can go with the JPA or either we can go with the Hibernate native API. Once we are interact with the Hibernate, Hibernate internally work with the JDBC, and that JDBC are perform a raw queries. Just a minute. So let's continue. Today there are lots of disturbance from outer side. So I summarize that things once again. We are use Hibernate architecture. So data access layer, that's belonging from your code. That code are use Hibernate using Jakarta Persistent API, or there are second way to use Hibernate native API. So there are two ways are available to use Hibernate. Either we can go with a JPA, or either we can go with a Hibernate native API. Okay. Hibernate internally uses JDBC to interact a database and provide a configuration object that configures Hibernate and provides a load Hibernate setting from configuration files. So that's a simple Hibernate architecture. So hope you understand that things. So I'm going to close that. So so what are the things you need to remember? To use Hibernate, there are two ways are available. Either you can go with a JPA, or either you can go with a Hibernate native. If we want to go with a Hibernate native, then what things are available? Hibernate provide number of interfaces and their implementation. If we want to go with Hibernate native, then there are one interface. That interface name is a session factory. Using that interface, we need to use a session interface. So what means a session factory and session interface? That we can discuss when we are configure that things. But currently you need to understand that things. If you are go with a Hibernate native, then you can use session factory interface and session interface. If you want to use a JPA, then you need to go with a entity manager factory and entity manager interface. So that's the way to use either Hibernate using either JPA or either Hibernate native. So first thing is first, we can go with Hibernate native, and after that we can go with JPA, right? So here I just create one one a project. That project is a Maven project, and it's within that Maven POM file I use bill of material, right? You understand that thing. Now within a Java folder, I create one package. That package name, I'm going to create one package. That package name is app. That package name is app. Within that app, I'm going to create one new class file. That my class file is main file. It's a main file. It's a holding public static void main. That means our application will be execute from that file. Okay. So I just create a structure first. So please notice that things carefully. So after app, what the next things are required? I want to create a table, right? And to store that table, creation of table code, to store that code, I need one another package. So that's why I create one another package, and that package name is entity. That package name is entity. So I create one another package entity. After that, to write to write uh, a logic manipulated data, we required one another package, and that package I called uh, DAO package. Okay, DAO, I called it DAO package. So I have three packages: app, DAO, entity. Hope you understand why we are use that package. Once again, app package holding main.java file. That's the entry point for our Java application. After that, the DAO package. DAO package are holding those all source file, which is a implement logic to manipulate the data. After that, the entity, that package holding that all source file, which are able to create entities like tables, So table we are going to create by program from right now. Okay. So 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 it's a employee CRUD application, right? So we need to create a table. Hmm. We need to create a table. That means entity we need to create. Entity we need to create. Okay. So the first we need to create a table. So we click to entity. Okay. Click to entity and click to class. And I want to create employee entity. Employee entity. It's finished. Okay. So within that employee entity, I need to write those code who are helpful to create a table. To create a table. What's your name? Abdul. If I am switch that theme into dark, then it's not visible to you because I already check that things. When it's a dark, it's not visible to students. Okay. So we require to create an entity, right? So for that reason, the first thing is first, we are write all POM file. We are write all the things within POM file. So let's build our Maven first. So when we are build Maven, that all dependencies are downloaded at local side. So that's why we require clean install. So that all dependencies are downloaded and placed on local side. Okay, once it's a success, then we are start to write our code. Now, that employee entity we need to use as an entity. So that's why that entity belongs from JPA. So at the rate entity annotation I'm going to use here. That entity annotation, it's belong from Jakarta persistent. So that that annotation I import here from Jakarta persistent entity. After that, I'm use a entity. So when I compile my program, it's created one table. That table name is employee entity. But I don't want to use that name employee entity. So that's why I'm use one another annotation that name is a table. And that annotation have one argument that is a name. So here I declare my table, it's EMP details. EMP details, that's my table name. So that annotation belong from Jakarta persistent and there are table annotation. Now whatever a class I'm declare here, that's a entity class and it's a create one table. That table name is employee details. But I need some columns within my table, right? So the first column I want as a primary key and I want it auto increment. I want it auto increment. For that reason, to set a primary key, I'm use one another annotation that is a ID. That is a ID. It's belong from Jakarta persistent. ID I'm use here. After that, after ID, that ID purpose is what? We are going to use a primary key. But that primary key I want auto increment. And for auto increment purpose, I'm use one another annotation that's a generate value. Generated value. Generated value. It's belong from Jakarta persistent. It's have one argument that is the strategy. Strategy. And that strategy value is a generation type. Okay. So that strategy value is a generation type. Dot identity. That's also belong from Jakarta persistent. Now, now that all annotation I want to assign for my one variable that is a private. It's a integer type and name of that variable is AMP employee ID. Employee ID. So why it's not import generation type? Okay. That means I create one column and that column name I want employee ID. So that's why I'm not assign their column. Okay. After that, I required one another column. So that's why I'm use annotation column. Column. It's belong from Jakarta persistent. I want that column name. Column name is a employee first name. Is employee first name. So that's my column name, and I assign that column for a variable private string type. first name. Done. For same way, I need to create some different that means some other columns. So it's a last name. It's a last name. After that, we are going to create one another column, that's the email. Email, and it's assigned for a variable private, a string email. Okay, done. Once we are write that three columns, after that, I want to use higher date. So that's why at the rate column, that name is a higher date. And that column we are assigned for private java.sql date. 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 That's a higher date. Okay. So that's enough. Huh? So we have created some columns, and that columns are represent by some fields. That's the first name, last name, email, and hire date. Once we are create that columns, that means that fields. After that, we require getter setter method to get and set a data. But before that, we required one constructor because Hibernate are required a default constructor. So that's why I'm going to create a constructor. So it's a default constructor we required for Hibernate. So it's a prerequisite for Hibernate. So when we are create any entity, we require one default constructor. Once we are write a constructor, it's a time to write a getter and setter method. So generate, we require to use a toString. Okay. And other things according to our requirement. So here, just a minute. Okay. So let's summarize our code. I just posted that code on our chat box. So we are create one entity class. What is the purpose of that entity class? It's a plain old Java object that represent an entity in your database. It maps to table name, that's the EMP details in your database. This class is used by Hibernate to perform CRUD operation, that means create, read, update, and delete on an employee details table. After that, within that application, we are use some import statement. Within that file, we are use some import statement. First is a column. It's located in a package jakarta.persistent. That column used to specify the details of a column in the database table. After that, we have another annotation, that's entity. It's a specify that the class is an entity and it's mapped to a database table. After that, generated value. It's a specify that the value of the annotation, and that means sorry, that value of annotated field will be generated automatically. We are use that things for what? Auto increment. After that, we have generation type. That generation types, that's enumerate the different types of primary key generation strategy. After that, we have ID. It's a specify the primary key of an entity. After that, we have a table. It's a specify the table name in the database that these entity map to. And here we are use one another things. What says date. Uh, to represent SQL date type, we are use for mapping date SQL type to a Java. So that's why we are use Java SQL date. So hope you understand that all annotations and import statement from that file. Is any other question? I posted that code on chat box. Is any other question there regarding that entity file? Did you understand each and every statement from that entity file? Okay. So once we are created entity file, now it's a time to configure our Hibernate. To configure our Hibernate, we are use Hibernate native. We are not go with the Jakarta persistent API. Just for entity purpose, we are use a JPA. But other all things we are write with a Hibernate native. So it's a Hibernate native application. So now it's a time to configure Hibernate. To configure Hibernate, we have resource. We have resource folder. What's the folder name? Resource folder. Within a resource folder, I'm going to create one new XML file. XML file. XML file I'm going to create. That file name is hibernate.cfg.xml. So that's a Hibernate configuration file for native Hibernate project. There are two ways to use Hibernate. Either you can go with a native Hibernate API, or either you can go with a Jakarta persistent API. So currently we are go with a Hibernate native API. So that's why we need to create one file, configuration file. That configuration file is hibernate.cfg.xml within resource folder. So let's create. So here we required DTD schema. So it's empty. We need to write it then. Back. So it's empty. So I need to write next XML declaration. Okay. Look here. We have created one XML file. What is the meaning of that first number line? That file is a type of XML. The version number is 1.0 and it's a use encoding schema that's a UTF 8-bit. Now I need to write the tags belong from Hibernate. The first tag is a doc type. It's that doc type belongs from Hibernate configuration. Hibernate configuration. That configuration is a public. That configuration is a public, and it's the source, the language which we are use here. That's English. So after public, I'm going to use double quote. Within double quote, I use hyphen / Hibernate / Hibernate version 3.0, and its language is English again. Okay, next. I need a configuration for DT, and it's available within HTTP. Version 3.0 or DT. Okay, is any typo mistake there? Type no. Take some time to compile. Okay, what's the meaning? Whatever things I'm right here. Okay, I write document type definition. In short, it's called DTD. It's a declaration for an XML document. In the contents of Hibernate, these lines specifically declares that the XML file addressed to the Hibernate configuration. That's a document type definition, and version number is a 3.0. Version number is a 3.0. So here we are use a doc type. That doc type is a declaration which tells the XML parser what the kind of document structure to be expect. It specifies that the root element of the XML document is Hibernate configuration. After that, we are use a public, right? These keyword indicate that the DTD is publicly available. It means that the XML documentation should conform to publicly define. After that, we have one string, right? This is the public identifier for the DTD. It provides a unique identifier for the DTD. So the initial dash is a convention in a public identifiers. And after that double slash hibernate, it's the organization responsible for that DTD. And after that, the name and version of the DTD, we are right. And EN specify the language in which the DTD is written. That's the English. After that, the second string. This is the URL where the DTD can be found. If the parser cannot find the DTD locally, it can download it from these URL. So that's the explanation for DTD. And DTD stand for what? Document type. Document type definition. So let's move. So once we are understand what's the DTD, next thing is our root element. That root element is a Hibernate configuration. That's a root element. That's open and close tag. Within that root element, we have one another element, another tag. That tag name is a session factory. What's the tag name? Session factory. Within a session factory, we are write a properties. We are write property. That means database connection setting, schema management, that transaction management or any other settings we are set within that tag. So here I need to write a property. The property name is first thing is what we require. We required a database driver, right? So I need to set a setting for a database connection. That's Hibernate. Hibernate dot connection dot driver. Hibernate connection dot driver, and that's a driver class, right? And what's the driver class we have for PostgreSQL? org dot postgresql dot driver. So we are registered our driver here. Once we are registered driver, after that, the next things we require URL, username, and password, right? So property, it's opening and closing tags. That's a property. Name, we require URL. So Hibernate dot connection dot URL. That URL and the value of this URL is we have value. Okay, JDBC colon Postgres SQL colon double slash localhost. Port number, default port number is a 5432. And after that, my database name, EMPDB. That's my database name. Okay, so that things I'm right within my URL. After that, after URL, the next property, that's username and password for our database. So it's a property. It's Hibernate dot connection dot username. What's my username? It's a Postgres. And next thing is a password for my database. So Hibernate dot connection dot password. My password is 123. That's a normal password. Okay. So I write all database connection settings. That's JDBC driver, database URL, database username, and database password. Once I write those all things, after that, next things I require the schema management. That's a property. Okay. The schema management is what? When we are use that configuration, how we can interact with the database. That means we need to create a new database. We need to use existing database or any other. So that things we need to write here. So name, it's Hibernate dot HBM to DDL, and it's auto. I require it's auto. And that things there are three values are there. Either create, that means every time when you are run your application, it will be create new database. Update, use existing database, or none. No automatic schema management. So we are use here update. So we can use existing tables without drop it. Okay. After that, okay, that's enough. Other things we can use later. Now that configuration I want to map with my class, entity class. So Hibernate will be use that class to create a table. So here the mapping, that's a class, mapping class equal to what's our mapping class? It's a employee entity, and it is available within entity package dot class name employee entity. Okay, I simply create a mapping class, that's a employee entity. So our configuration are use that entity class to create a table. And after that, session factory close and Hibernate configuration are closed. So hope you understand that things. So that's our Hibernate configuration file. So is any question regarding this file? So that's our Hibernate configuration file, and we are use Hibernate native API. So I'm going to post that file with you. Okay, let's take a file. If you have any question, you can ask now. Okay, ठीक है. Is any other question? Okay. Okay. From beginning. आता हा कोड कॉपी तर केलेला आहे. तर मी फाईल डिलीट करतो. Delete. Okay. Continue. Now, look here. काय करायचंय? Hibernate वापरण्यासाठी आपण एंटिटी क्लास तर बनवला टेबलसाठी, पण हायबरनेटचं कॉन्फिगरेशन मी लिहिलं नाही, जिथे मी हा एंटिटी क्लास वापरू शकेन. मग हे कॉन्फिगरेशन कुठं लिहिलं जातं? तर रिसोर्स म्हणून एक फोल्डर आहे. त्या फोल्डरमध्ये एक नवीन फाईल तयार करायची. ती फाईल कुठली असणार आहे? XML फाईल. तर मी XML फाईल अशा पद्धतीने तयार करतोय. आणि या फाईलला नाव काय देतोय? तर या फाईलला नाव आहे hibernate.cfg config.xml. तर या फाईलचं नाव आहे हे. ही फाईल तयार झाली. या फाईलमध्ये आपण काय कोड लिहिला? तर सगळ्यात आधी डॉक टाइप लिहिला. आता हा डॉक टाइप काय दर्शवतो? की आपण जो काही कोड करतोय या फाईलमध्ये, तो हायबरनेट कॉन्फिगरेशनसाठी करतोय. तो पब्लिकली अवेलेबल आहे. It's belong from Hibernate for Hibernate configuration. And it's belong from document type definition DTD version 3.0 आणि हे it's use English language. जर आपल्या कंपायलरला तो डॉक टाइप कळाला नाही, तर तो डाउनलोड करू शकतो या URL वरून. तो डाउनलोड करू शकतो या URL वरून. त्याच्यानंतर जो रूट एलिमेंट आहे, रूट टॅग म्हणू आपण. तो रूट टॅग आहे हायबरनेट कॉन्फिगरेशन, ज्याच्यामध्ये आपण आपले कॉन्फिगरेशन सेट करू शकतो. मग हे कॉन्फिगरेशन म्हणजे काय? तर प्रॉपर्टीज आणि प्रॉपर्टीज या सेशन फॅक्टरी इंटरफेस रिगार्डिंग असतं. तर सेशन फॅक्टरी काय? इंटरफेस आहे आणि या इंटरफेसला आपण वेगवेगळे प्रॉपर्टी असाइन करतो, म्हणजे व्हॅल्यू असाइन करतो with the variables. So here we are set some property to make a connection with the database. आणि हे प्रॉपर्टी काय करतात? तर पहिली प्रॉपर्टी ड्रायव्हर रजिस्टर करते डेटाबेसचा. दुसरी प्रॉपर्टी URL. तिसरी प्रॉपर्टी आपली पोस्ट युजर नेम आणि पासवर्ड. मग ही प्रॉपर्टी लिहिताना जे नेम आहे, ते नेम ठराविक पद्धतीनेच दिलं पाहिजे. अदरवाईज दॅट प्रॉपर्टी आर नॉट अफेक्टेड. म्हणजे काय? की या गोष्टी ठरलेल्या आहेत. सो दॅट थिंग्स आर हायबरनेट. हायबरनेटमध्ये काय? कनेक्शन आहे. कनेक्शनमध्ये काय? ड्रायव्हर क्लास. मग त्यानंतर आपल्याला जो ड्रायव्हर क्लास द्यायचा आहे, तो ड्रायव्हर क्लास ॲज अ व्हॅल्यू म्हणून आपण इथे पास करतो. त्याच पद्धतीने हायबरनेट डॉट कनेक्शन URL, युजर नेम, पासवर्ड. तर या पद्धतीने आपण डेटाबेसचे कनेक्शन सेट करून घेतले. त्याच्यानंतर डेटाबेस कनेक्शन सेट झाल्यानंतर आपण अजून एक प्रॉपर्टी वापरली आहे. ती आहे hibernate.hbm2ddl. याचा अर्थ काय? जेव्हा कधी आपलं ॲप्लिकेशन एक्झिक्यूट होणार, रन होणार आहे, तेव्हा आपल्याला आपले टेबल्स प्रत्येक वेळेस नवीन तयार करून पाहिजेत का एक्झिस्टिंग टेबल आपण वापरणार आहे, हे आपण ठरवू शकतो या स्कीमाने. या स्कीमाने. आणि त्यासाठी आपण हा स्कीमा वापरलाय. दॅट्स अ प्रॉपर्टी वी आर यूज हिअर. दॅट्स HBM टू DDL, हायबरनेट मॉडेल टू DDL. आणि इट्स अपडेट. अपडेट म्हणजे मला एक्झिस्टिंग टेबल्स सुद्धा चालतील. आणि त्यानंतर मी एंटिटी क्लास बनवलाय. एंटिटी क्लास आता इथे कॉन्फिगरेशनला मॅप करण्यासाठी मॅपिंग नावाचा टॅग मी यूज केला. त्याच्यामध्ये क्लास आणि तो क्लास कुठला आहे? द पॅकेज नेम एंटिटी डॉट एम्प्लॉई एंटिटी. तर या पद्धतीने मी माझं एंटिटी मॅप करून घेतलं माझ्या कॉन्फिगरेशन फाईल सोबत. इज इट डन? Is it clear how to create Hibernate config file? If you can't find XML option, then simply create any file. And when you create a file, write your file name .xml. That file name must be hibernate.cfg.xml. किंवा जर तुम्हाला XML सापडत नसेल तर तुम्ही न्यू फाईल तयार करू शकता. फाईल एम्प्टी फाईल असेल हे तयार करतानाच नाव द्या आणि एक्सटेन्शन द्या. त्या प्रकारची फाईल तुमची तयार होईल. ओके. नाव आता कॉन्फिगरेशन फाईल माझी तयार झाली. बरोबर. आता हे कॉन्फिगरेशन मला वापरायचं प्रोग्राम थ्रू. मग प्रोग्राम थ्रू मला वापरायचं पण पूर्ण प्रोजेक्टमध्ये वापरायचं मला. सगळ्या प्रोजेक्टमध्ये वापरायचं. मग ह्याच्यासाठी मी एक छोटंसं युटिलिटी तयार करतो. ती युटिलिटी एका डिझाइन पॅटर्नवर काम करेल. म्हणजे काय? त्या युटिलिटीमध्ये मी जो ऑब्जेक्ट तयार करेन, तो ऑब्जेक्ट मी सगळीकडे वापरेन. आणि यालाच म्हटलं जातं सिंगल टोन पॅटर्न. तर आता आपण बघतोय हाऊ वी कॅन क्रिएट अ सिंगल टोन पॅटर्न. तर सिंगल टोन पॅटर्न तयार करण्यासाठी ॲपमध्ये ॲपमध्ये मी एक फाईल तयार केली. फाईलला नाव दिलं क्लास फाईल आहे ही. फाईलला नाव दिलं हायबरनेट util. That's file I have created there. Hibernate util. आता ही फाईल मला काय म्हणून वापरायची? इट्स अ सिंगल ऑब्जेक्ट. दॅट ऑब्जेक्ट इंटरॅक्ट विथ आवर हायबरनेट API. हायबरनेट नेटिव्ह API शी हा सिंगल ऑब्जेक्ट इंटरॅक्ट करेल. मग ह्याच्यासाठी मला प्रत्येक वेळेस ऑब्जेक्ट तयार करायची गरज पडू नये, याच्यासाठी मला सिंगल टोन ऑब्जेक्ट बनवायचं. सो फॉर दॅट रिझन I'm going to write that code. So first I need to create instance. So it's a private, it's a static, and it's a final. आणि कशाचा इन्स्टन्स बनवतोय मी? तर सेशन फॅक्टरी इंटरफेसचा. सेशन फॅक्टरी काय? इंटरफेस. सेशन फॅक्टरी. It's belong from Hibernate native API. It's belong from Hibernate native API. Session factory interface. Name is a session factory. तर आपण सिंपल एक इन्स्टन्स तयार केला. पण अजून त्याकडे मेमरी नाहीये. आणि इंटरफेसला मेमरी कधीच अशी असाइन होत नाही. आणि आपण फायनल दिलेला आहे. म्हणजे हा नंतर आपण चेंज पण करू शकत नाही. एकदा मेमरी असाइन केली. मग याला मेमरी असाइन करण्यासाठी किंवा इनिशियलाइज करण्यासाठी आपल्याला आयदर ब्लॉक्स लिहावे लागतील किंवा कन्स्ट्रक्टर तयार करावा लागेल या क्लासचा. तर आपण स्टॅटिक ब्लॉक लिहू. स्टॅटिक. स्टॅटिक ब्लॉक लिहू. काय करायचंय? सेशन फॅक्टरीला इनिशियलाइज करायचं. It's initialize a new memory with a configuration class. Configuration class. And it's invoke configure method with a build session factory. So it's provide using the property and mappings in a configuration. म्हणजे कॉन्फिगरेशन आपण मध्ये जे काही आपण लिहिलंय ते अलोकेट केलं कुणाला? सेशन फॅक्टरी या ऑब्जेक्टला using configuration class. That's a class. It's a return a new instance. After that configure method, it's used for mapping properties, specifying application resources, which we are write within hibernate.config file. And after that, build session factory. That's create session factory instance object. That's create session factory object. तर इथे आपण इनिशियलाइज केलं सेशन फॅक्टरीला. त्याच्यानंतर कॅच लिहू. कॅच थ्रोएबल. Row row new exception in initializer error. That's a key. That's a key. Okay. तर मी एक थ्रो केला एक्सेप्शन. तर इथे माझा क्लास संपतोय ना. तर स्टॅटिक ब्लॉक आपला इथे संपला. हा ब्लॉक एक्झिक्यूट होईल कन्स्ट्रक्टर कॉल करायच्या आधी, बरोबर. सो नाव इट्स अ टाइम टू क्रिएट ऑब्जेक्ट. आता ऑब्जेक्ट मला सिंगल टोन पॅटर्न मध्ये पाहिजे, म्हणजे एकदाच ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट होईल आणि तो ऑब्जेक्ट आपण पूर्ण प्रोजेक्ट मध्ये त्याच ऑब्जेक्टची मेमरी वापरू शकतो. मग याच्यासाठी मी एक पब्लिक मेथड तयार करतोय. पब्लिक स्टॅटिक इट्स allocate one's memory and it's written session factory. It's a written session factory from Hibernate and method name is a get session. Method name is get session factory. ही मेथड आहे. हे रिटर्न काय करते, सेशन फॅक्टरी ऑब्जेक्ट रिटर्न करते. आणि मेथड मध्ये मी लिहितो रिटर्न आपला कुठला मेथड ऑब्जेक्ट आपण तयार केलाय, सेशन फॅक्टरी. Session factory that created object I return with including memory. So let's summarize. We have created one class. That class name is Hibernate util class. The purpose of that Hibernate util class is a utility class that provides a session factory for managing Hibernate sessions. A session factory is a thread set. It's a immutable caching of compiled mapping for a single database. It is used to obtain session object, which are the primary interface for performing CRUD operation in Hibernate. So that's the purpose of this class. Here we are import two statement. One is a session factory and second is a configuration. So session factory represent factory for session objects which are used to interact with a database. And configuration, it's a configure Hibernate, typically use an XML configuration file or programmatically. That means it is also possible that we can instead write configuration file, we can write a program for configuration. So here we are use a new configuration, line number 10. That's okay. I will highlight. Here I use a new configuration. So it's a create new configuration object which is used to configure Hibernate. After that, I call configure method. It's a read the Hibernate config.xml file. That's a configuration file to set up the configuration. And at the end, I invoke one another method build session factory that builds session factory using the configuration settings and return a session factory object. After that, I create one method. Once we are allocate initialize that session factory object, after that I create one method that return session factory. So we are here we write provides a way to access the session factory from other classes using singleton pattern. So that's a way to create a singleton pattern. So now whenever I required object, I just invoke that method. That method is name is what? Get session factory. So it's a use same memory space. It's not create any new method. So I hope you understand Hibernate util class. That's a code, and I'm going to share that code with you. So is any question regarding that Hibernate util class? I just share a code of Hibernate util class. Is any question regarding Hibernate util class? Is any question regarding Hibernate util class? Yes, that's the approach we are using in IT industry. Otherwise, older approach is very difficult. Older approach is very difficult. That means for every entity, you need to create a HPM file. That's the older approach. Another approach is what instead create a singleton file. You can initialize that session factory in each your method where you are use that session factory for perform any CRUD operation. So that's the older way. And I show you the current way for native Hibernate application. That's the purpose for what? Native Hibernate application, which are use Hibernate native API. Remember always, I say that things there are two ways to use Hibernate. Either you can go with a JPA or either you can go with a Hibernate native API. And in our first program, we are going to study that things, how we can use Hibernate native API. And once we are complete that things, I will convert same program for JPA. To write industry based application, maximally we are use JPA. We are not use Hibernate native, but there are some applications are required a specific Hibernate native API. So that's why it is required to study both things. Is any question there? Is any other question there? Is any other question there? Okay. If you're not have any question, I'm going to create a next class that's holding all logic to manipulate the data. Currently, we are not use a DAO. DAO is not required. So instead DAO, I just rename it. Rename, refactor. I'm not use a DAO. I use a service. I just rename it's a service. And within that service, I create one class at employee service. Employee service class. It's not required public static void mail. Okay. So that's a employee service class. Within that class, the first thing is first, I want to add an employee, right? I want to add an employee use within my table. So for that reason, I'm used to create one method within my class. I'm going to create one method. That method is a public because we are used that method outside of our class. Public. It's not written anything. Method name is a save employee. That's the method name. That method holding one object, which object we want to store within our table. So it's object belong from employee. Employee. What's our class name? Employee entity class. Entity. And the object name is employee. Okay. So we need to import it. Okay. So here I want to save employee, right? So first thing is first. The Hibernate provide one interface. That interface name is transaction. What? Transaction. So using transaction interface, we are make a transactions like save a data within a file, retrieve that data. If we that means commit that data or retrieve that data. So that's why I create one transaction object. It's an instance because that instance it's not Jakarta transaction. We are use Hibernate transaction. It's an interface and name is a transaction. So we are create one object that's initialized with a null value. After that, once we are create a transaction object, after that, to create a transaction, to make a transaction, that's a risky code. So that's why I use a try with resource block. So I don't need to close a connection every time. It's a session. So I'm going to create the object of session. Object of session. That's the name is a session. So actually session object are useful to perform a database operations. That means add a data, delete a data, retrieve a data. So here I create a session object and that session object initialize with Hibernate utility. Hibernate util dot get session factory object. Get session factory. And that session we require to open. So that's why dot open session. So here we are open session. Once we are open session, the next thing using that session, I need to perform operation. So the first thing I want to make transaction. So to make transaction, first thing is first we need to begin a transaction. So that's why let's initialize a transaction. That's initialized with the session dot begin transaction. So we are begin our transaction here, and after that, once we are begin transaction, then I want to save a data within our database. So that's why session dot save method I invoke session dot save method. Session dot save method I invoke here save, and that method save employee object. And once we are saved, now it's a time to commit. So transaction dot commit. So I'm save that stages. That means write it finally. I need to insert the data within my database. And after try, I need to write a catch. It's not required to cast. Why it's showing error? Okay. So here I'm use a method persist because maybe a save are deprecated. That means it's a remove from a newer version. At older time, we are use a save method. So that's a simple method I write here to save an employee within our database. So is any question regarding this method? Is any question regarding those method? Okay. So if you're not have any question, then today's meeting I'm going to end here. Please be there. I'm going to take attendance. Okay. So students, see you tomorrow. And tomorrow we are continue our Hibernate topic. And I hope tomorrow will be complete that application which use Hibernate native API and we are switched to JPA. So thank you very much to attending today's class. See you tomorrow. Still that code is incomplete. Once it's complete, I will share with you.